Just 4 points, 0 field goals made, 6 missed shots. That was Tyrese Haliburton's performance in Game 5 of the 2025 NBA Finals, and the internet exploded. Critics came out of the woodwork saying this proved what they'd been saying all along, that Halliburton was nothing more than hype. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Just months earlier, his own NBA peers had voted him the most overrated player in the league. 14.4% of players chose Halliburton as the guy who gets too much credit, too much praise, and too much respect. And now, with his team down 3-2 in the finals and a calf injury threatening to end his season, Tyrese faces the ultimate test. Can the kid who's been doubted his entire life prove once again that the critics are dead wrong? This isn't just about one bad game or one injury. This is the story of a player who's been counted out at every single level, from getting cut by Tyler Herro's dad at age 14, to sliding to the 12th pick in the NBA draft, to being traded away by Sacramento after just a season and a half. Every time someone said he wasn't good enough, Tyrese found a way to make them eat their words. But the finals are different. This is where legends are made and where careers are defined. What happened in his childhood that made him so resilient? How did a skinny kid from Wisconsin with one of the weirdest shooting forms in basketball become one of the most clutch performers we've ever seen? And why do his own peers think he's overrated when the numbers tell a completely different story? The rejection started early for Tyrese. When he was just 14 years old, playing AAU basketball should have been his ticket to bigger things. Instead, it became his first taste of devastating disappointment. Tyler Herro's father, Chris, was coaching their team, and one day, he called up Tyrese's parents with news that would crush any kid's dreams. He told them straight up that their son wasn't good enough and didn't have a future with the program. They never officially said Tyrese was cut, but his parents later told him the message was clear. He could come if he wanted to, which somehow felt even worse than a direct dismissal. But that humiliation was nothing compared to what happened at his next team. During one of his first practices, the coaches realized something was seriously wrong with his jumper. His release point was so low it started well below his waist, a habit he developed as a little kid when he didn't have the strength to shoot properly. Coach Brian Junikin decided to make a point about just how bad this form was, and what he did next would haunt most kids forever. He brought his 3-year-old grandson onto the court, had the toddler hold out his hand, and told Tyrese to shoot. The preschooler blocked the shot easily, with everyone in the gym laughing at the teenager who couldn't get his shot over a child barely out of diapers. Tyrese left practice in tears that day. But here's what separated him from every other kid who might have quit. He showed up the next morning ready to fix his shot. That obsession with improvement had been drilled into him since he was 6 years old, going to basketball camps every single morning throughout the summer, working on ball handling and shooting drills with the same legendary coach who would later call him the worst freshman he'd ever seen. High school brought new challenges and new ways to be overlooked. When Tyrese showed up late to practice one day as a freshman, Coach Frank Shade made him sit at center court while his teammates ran sprints. Not just a few sprints, so many that it looked like something out of Coach Carter. The message was clear, and Tyrese was never late again. But even as he improved, even as he led his team to an undefeated regular season as a junior, the doubts remained. When they choked in the state quarterfinals, losing a game Tyrese later admitted he didn't play well in, it seemed like maybe the critics were right. But champions respond differently to failure. As a senior, Tyrese exploded for 22.9 points, 6.2 assists, 5.1 rebounds, 3.5 steals, and 1.7 blocks per game, leading Oshkosh North to a 26-1 record and the school's first state championship in history. In the finals, he dropped 30 points and went a perfect 18 for 18 from the free throw line. Despite this dominant performance and a state title, the basketball world still didn't notice. He was just some small-town kid from northern Wisconsin. That's when Iowa State took a chance on him, and something magical started happening. During his freshman year, an NBA scout came to watch practice. Afterward, he approached Coach Steve Prohm and asked which player would get drafted highest. Coach Prohm figured it would be Talon Horton-Tucker, who did eventually get picked 46th. But the scout had a different answer that shocked everyone in the room. He said it would be Halliburton, even though the kid had only played 10 college games. The scout saw something others missed: the way Tyrese communicated with refs without making them angry, how he connected with teammates and coaches, and most importantly, how he made everyone around him better. The numbers as a freshman weren't spectacular, just 6.8 points and 3.6 assists per game. But there was something about his presence, his basketball IQ, and his ability to make the right play that stood out. As a sophomore, he improved to 15.2 points and 6.5 assists while shooting 50% from the field and 42% from three. He was projected as a lottery pick and seemed destined for NBA stardom. Then, disaster struck midway through the season when he broke his wrist, tried to come back too early, and re-injured it, effectively ending his year. Most players would have left for the NBA at that point, knowing they were going to be drafted and become millionaires. But Tyrese stayed at Iowa, attending every practice and every game, cheering for his teammates even though he couldn't play. That loyalty and team-first mentality would become his calling card, but it didn't stop him from being overlooked once again. The 2020 NBA draft was supposed to be Halliburton's moment. He had the size, the efficiency, the basketball IQ, and the leadership skills that teams craved. But draft night brought familiar disappointment. Pick after pick went by, with teams selecting players who looked more athletic or had bigger name recognition. When Sacramento finally called his name at 12th overall, it felt like vindication, but also like another reminder that he'd been undervalued. Looking back now, he should have been the second pick behind Anthony Edwards. Walking into Kings training camp, Tyrese faced immediate skepticism from the staff. All they saw was a skinny 185-pound kid who wasn't very athletic and had this weird shooting form with an impossibly low release point. The doubts were written all over their faces. But when the season started, Halliburton did what he'd always done. He made the doubters look foolish. Shooting 41% from three as a rookie, he became the team's best shooter and one of the most accurate in the entire NBA. His 5.3 assists to just 1.6 turnovers showed incredible decision-making for someone his age. Even playing alongside ball-dominant De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese found ways to make the Kings better when he was on the court. He finished third in Rookie of the Year voting and seemed to have found his home in Sacramento. But professional basketball is a business, and loyalty doesn't always matter. Despite improving to 14.3 points and a team-high 7.4 assists in his sophomore season, the Kings were struggling with a 20-35 record and decided they needed to make changes. With Fox established as their franchise point guard, Halliburton became the most valuable trade asset they had. Before that fateful trade, something significant happened that would change Tyrese's entire approach to the game. He met with Drew Hanlen, the famous NBA development coach who'd worked with superstars like Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, and Bradley Beal. Hanlen wasn't looking for new clients, so he started pressing Halliburton with brutal questions to see if this kid was worth his time. How many times are you going to be an all-star? How many all-NBA first teams will you make? Then came the challenge that would define their relationship. Hanlen told him the biggest problem was that he was only attempting 11 shots per game. Since Tyrese wore number 14 in high school, Hanlen gave him an ultimatum: shoot 14 field goal attempts in the very next game against Philadelphia, or he wouldn't work with him. The next night, January 29th, Halliburton went out and dropped a career-high 38 points on 11 for 19 shooting. He'd accepted the challenge and dominated. But even that breakout performance couldn't save him from being traded. On February 8, 2022, the deal was announced: Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson to Indiana for Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, and Justin Holiday. At the time, it seemed like a fair trade. In hindsight, the Pacers absolutely robbed Sacramento. It took exactly 2 practices for Halliburton to completely transform how the Pacers played basketball. Outlet passes flew faster, threes went up earlier, and the ball zipped around the court like it was on fire. Players started cutting harder because they knew their new point guard would see them and get them the ball. The energy was infectious, and suddenly a team that had been playing at the 20th fastest pace in the league was flying up and down the court with the 4th highest pace in the NBA. But it wasn't just the on-court changes that mattered. The Pacers had been a business-like group without much personality. Guys who came in, worked, but didn't have that spark. When Halliburton arrived, everything changed. Players started showing up to practice with smiles because they knew their point guard genuinely wanted to see them succeed. That selfless leadership style, combined with his incredible court vision and passing ability, made the Pacers fun to watch for the first time in years. In his first full season in Indiana, Tyrese averaged 20.7 points and 10.4 assists, while shooting close to 50-40-90. He made his first All-Star team and started building the reputation as one of the most exciting young players in the league. His game winners started piling up, including incredible shots against Miami and Chicago that had fans jumping out of their seats. When he dropped 43 points on a franchise record 10 three-pointers against Miami, it was clear that this wasn't just potential anymore. This was stardom. The Pacers surrounded him with complementary pieces, trading for Pascal Siakam and adding players who could run and shoot. Everything seemed to be clicking as they made the playoffs and even reached the Eastern Conference Finals. But then came the Olympics, where Halliburton barely played, despite being one of the best point guards in the league. Those 26 total minutes in Paris felt like another slight, another reminder that he was still being undervalued at the highest levels. The 2025 season started as a disaster. Halliburton was shooting just 37% from the field and 28% from 3 through his first 15 games. The Pacers were barely above .500, and suddenly the whispers started getting louder. Maybe he wasn't as good as people thought. Maybe he was just a product of pace and good teammates. Maybe the critics had been right all along. Then came the crushing blow that would define his entire season. The Athletic released their annual anonymous player poll, and the results were devastating. 14.4% of NBA players, his own peers, guys he competed against every night, voted Tyrese Haliburton as the most overrated player in the league. It wasn't even close. No other player got more than 10% of the votes for that category. For someone who'd spent his entire life proving doubters wrong, this hit different. These weren't media members or fans speculating from the outside. These were the best basketball players in the world saying he didn't deserve the recognition he was getting. For the first time in his career, Tyrese admitted to having real self-doubt. He got caught up in the outside noise and started questioning everything about his game. But champions don't stay down long. Right around Christmas, something clicked. The Pacers went on an absolute tear, posting a 40-17 record from December until the end of the regular season. Halliburton's aggression and efficiency improved drastically, and he finished the year averaging 18.6 points and 9.2 assists with a 58% effective field goal percentage, better than Steph Curry's mark that same season. His 5.6 assist-to-turnover ratio led the entire NBA. Despite missing the All-Star team due to his slow start, Tyrese earned his second consecutive All-NBA third-team selection. The regular season ended with optimism, but nobody was prepared for what would happen in the playoffs. What we witnessed was one of the most clutch runs in NBA playoff history. The numbers are almost impossible to believe. In the 2025 playoffs, Halliburton shot 12 of 14 on shots to tie or take the lead in the final 2 minutes of games. 12 of 14. That's not just good, that's legendary. When the game was on the line and the lights were brightest, the supposedly overrated player was automatic. Against Milwaukee in the first round, The Pacers found themselves down by 7 points with just 35 seconds left in Game 5. Normal teams would have given up. Normal players would have accepted defeat. But Tyrese engineered one of the most impossible comebacks in playoff history, scoring key baskets and making crucial plays as the Pacers somehow won in overtime to close out the series. The second round against Cleveland brought more magic, trailing by 14 points after 3 quarters in Game 3, then by 7 with 1 minute left. Halliburton scored 6 points in the final minute, including an absolutely insane three-pointer that had announcers screaming in disbelief. The Cavaliers never recovered from that shot, and the Pacers won the series in 5 games. But the conference finals against New York provided the most jaw-dropping moment of all. Game 1 at Madison Square. Garden saw the Knicks take a 14-point lead with 2:51 remaining. The win probability at that moment was 100%. No team in NBA playoff history had ever come back from that deficit that late in a game. With 40 seconds left, Karl Anthony Towns extended the lead to 8, giving New York a 99.9% win probability. What happened next defied every statistical model and probability calculator in existence. Aaron Nesmith caught fire from 3-point range. The Knicks made crucial mistakes, and with 7 seconds left, the Pacers trailed by just 2 points. That's when Halliburton took the ball, stepped back behind the 3-point line, and calmly drained the most improbable shot in recent playoff memory. The building went silent. The impossible had happened. Even though the Pacers eventually lost that game in overtime, the psychological damage was done. They won Game 2 in New York as well, then returned home and closed out the series to reach their first finals since 2000. In Game 4 of that conference finals, Halliburton put together one of the greatest individual performances by a point guard in playoff history. 32 points, 12 rebounds, 15 assists, 5 three-pointers, 4 steals, and 0 turnovers. He became the first player in playoff history to achieve those numbers with 0 mistakes. The finals brought the ultimate test. Facing a talented Oklahoma City Thunder team, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Halliburton and the Pacers pushed the series to 6 games. But then came Game 5, the performance that threatened to overshadow everything he'd accomplished. 4 points on 0-6 shooting, clearly hampered by a calf injury that had him grimacing on every possession. The critics pounced immediately. Social media exploded with takes about how this proved he was overrated all along. The injury looked serious enough that his status for Game 6 was in serious doubt. An MRI would determine whether the player who'd been doubted his entire life would get one more chance to silence the skeptics. But here's what makes Tyrese Haliburton's story so compelling. He's never been defined by one bad game or one injury or one anonymous poll calling him overrated. From getting cut by Tyler Herro's dad, to being blocked by a 3-year-old, to sliding in the draft, to being traded away by Sacramento, to being benched at the Olympics, to being called the most overrated player in the league, every chapter of his career has been about responding to adversity. The kid from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, who learned the game by playing video games and studying Magic Johnson highlights, has spent his entire life turning doubters into believers. Whether it's his unorthodox shot form, his lightning-quick decision-making, or his ability to make impossible comebacks look routine, Halliburton has consistently proven that traditional evaluation methods don't always capture greatness. As Game 6 of the NBA Finals approaches, with his calf injury creating uncertainty about his availability, one thing remains crystal clear. Being labeled overrated is just another challenge for a player who's made a career out of proving people wrong. The same peers who voted him most overrated are about to find out whether the skinny kid with the weird shot has one more miracle left in him. Because if there's one thing we've learned about Tyrese Haliburton, it's that he's at his absolute best when nobody believes in him. And right now, with the basketball world questioning whether he can perform when it matters most, he's exactly where he's always thrived, with his back against the wall and everything to prove.